Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Film Haven Reviews. I'm your host Sawyer as always, and today we are finishing up our deep sea theme, which is kind of a sequel to the underwater theme we did last year, with the 1998 film Sphere. So last week I had said that I was maybe changing it up to a different movie called Deep Rising, but in the end what happened was that I was going on to Tubi with Allie to watch something else, and Sphere popped up and I kind of felt like it was Kismet. I was like, okay, well, I was thinking about watching this anyway for this theme, and then also Deep Rising you had to rent, so I was like, okay, well, it's kind of tipping in this favor, and you know what? I'm glad I did. I'm going to come to bat for this film because one of the issues, one of the reasons why I didn't really press go on it is because I thought it was going to be a lot worse than it was, because the film has a 35 Metacritic score, 35 out of 100, and then a 6.1 user score. So I knew that it was better and more fun than the critics were saying, because 6.1, for this kind of film is not too bad. Honestly, it's a very interesting mix of things here. It's a sci-fi thriller, but it's also underwater. It's also a psychological thriller. It's a mind bender, which I wasn't necessarily expecting that. So I definitely would say if you do want to watch this movie and you want to watch it completely kind of free of any kind of preconceived notions, I would maybe just stop it and just go watch it. It's on Tubi for free, and then come back and listen to the episode. I will be talking about some light spoilers, nothing like, I don't think I'm going to be talking too like crazy, but in order to kind of give you the hook, I'm going to have to explain a little bit of the movie, which means that there might be some of the things that make the movie fun is kind of the way that the mystery unfolds, the way that the sci-fi elements unfold. So it's kind of good to not know what's going on. But if you've watched the movie, or you don't care enough, or you just paused it and watched the movie and you're back now, then I'm going to be talking pretty freely about this thing. I'm not going to be thinking too much about spoilers because it's fun to talk about, so I want to kind of cover all the bases when it comes to this movie. Let's go with the IMDb description here. This one's pretty vague. A spaceship is discovered under 300 years worth of coral growth at the bottom of the sea. Let's see what the longer description is, and if see that's better. Yeah, okay. Let's see. According to the storyline on IMDb, not just the bio, like the plot line, 1,000 feet below the ocean, Navy divers discover an object half a mile long. A crack team of scientists are deployed to the site in the deep sea habitats, which is like a research facility at the bottom of the ocean. What they find boggles the mind as they discover a perfect metal sphere. What is the secret behind the sphere? Will they survive the mysterious manifestations? Who or what is creating these? They may never find out. So yeah, like if you're not watching the movie, the manifestations are maybe a little bit hard to even conceptualize, because it is a little wooey, but it's one of those things that reminds me a lot of H.P. Lovecraft, of course, which, even the last movie, it is similar also to Virus in some ways, because you have this kind of alien entity that is maybe beyond our comprehension a little bit, and that is the core of a lot of H.P. Lovecraft's kind of cosmic horror, one of the genres that he kind of helped create. And for example, From Beyond, that story, or even more famously maybe The Color Out of Space, which was made into a movie in 2019 with Nick Cage. That story is one of the earliest cosmic horror stories, at least in the brand that we have come to know it. And that is like the idea, like in that story, it's an asteroid that falls on this farm, and they try to do some research on it, and slowly but surely all these crazy things start happening on this farm, and the family at the farm just slowly begin to kind of rot away from this. They kind of crystallize into this like gray matter, and they don't know why. It's because the asteroid fell in the well and it poisoned like the whole soil and the water table and everything, but they don't know that. And there is the antagonist in that movie is not known. I mean, it's the asteroid for sure, but what's the purpose? Like, there's no ethos or pathos to the bad guy. It's so foreign, it's so different from our world that it's just reacting to us. It's a bad reaction. And because of that, people are dying and no one knows why. And it's just like, it's really cool. It's a horror story but it's also there's no conscious sentient bad guy. There is in this movie in Sphere, but it's more like it's similar to, as in it's two different types of science fiction. It was two different types, like it's like an alien and human entities colliding, and how those entities collide has some unintended consequences. So it's not so much that it's really anyone's fault. It's more just like, I'm different than you, and because of that, we don't know what's going to happen. It's similar to when the Europeans go over to the New World, and next thing you know, they're giving smallpox to everyone. Of course, they weaponize that later, which is terrible, but that we're not talking about that. But initially, just new diseases being transferred because these foreign entities are not used to interacting with each other, and they have different immunities. And then this one, it's more maybe psychological immunities, which is really cool. I love that concept. And this movie reminds me a lot of the movie Solaris, the Tarkovsky film, but also they remade it with George Clooney. And that is very mind-bendy. It's very much like what's reality, that kind of thing. Also reminds me a little bit of Sunshine, the Danny Boyle film from 2007. That was in space, but this one is, as we have talked about many times with these themes, underwater and outer space are very similar, and a lot of those movies are pretty much one-to-one in a lot of ways. You just have the extra, instead of the vacuum of space being dangerous, you have the depth of the ocean being dangerous. It makes sense. So there's a lot of movies that this reminds me of, and I think that's why, to some extent, it has been pandered a little bit by critics, is because I think I even saw one of the critics say that it was basically like a bad version. Let's see here. Chicago, Roger Ebert says 38, which is bad. A watered down take on the sci-fi classic Solaris. So it's just basically saying that was an immeasurably better film by Andrei Tarkovsky. So yeah, Tarkovsky's film is a masterpiece. So give it a grace a little bit here, but Roger Ebert's a critic, and he's watching every movie that comes out, and he's going to be comparing it to the classics because it's like they're being derivative. But I think this movie had its own kind of purposes. It's much more, I don't think this film was supposed to be substantive in any kind of conceptual way. It's supposed to be fun, and I think it's supposed to be something to chew on in a more sci-fi kind of, which of course sci-fi is very philosophical in nature, but I think it's just it's a thought experiment, which I can understand if you're comparing that to Solaris, which has more emotional and more philosophical kind of undertones to it, where you can write, dissertations on that movie. This movie is more just like, it's supposed to be a Hollywood blockbuster that was a little bit more intelligent than, just people shooting at each other, that kind of stuff. It is an action film in some ways, but compared, actually, I think the greatest comparison is to Virus, because Virus has the same idea. You have this foreign entity. It's colliding with electronics and with robotics. It has a plan to take over the world. It's a little bit more malevolent than this one is, but it is as a genre, it is much more body horror action. It's like your classic 90s action film, a little bit of Terminator in there, that kind of thing. Whereas this movie is much more based on the psychological element of it. And it kind of, whereas they barely brush the surface of what it could mean for this in Virus, for this entity to be so different and all powerful. They had, the big line was, "I am aware." The electronic entities, I'm not just electricity, I'm a consciousness. This one dealt a lot more into kind of what it would mean for us to interact with this. Also, what I liked about this movie was that it was set in this deep space lab right next to this, another Lovecraftian thing, right? Where I know The Thing was actually a book before the movie came out, The Thing from another, space, or from outer space or whatever, and then the John Carpenter movie. But John Carpenter's The Thing is very Lovecraftian. It reminds you a lot of At the Mountains of Madness, where you have these researchers in the Arctic that are going down and they're seeing this crashed alien vessel, or in the case of Mountains of Madness, this kind of alien habitat that has been there, that's older than everybody else in human history, and it's been there longer than any. But it's discovering these archaic kind of primordial things. In this case, this spaceship is underneath the coral and has been there for 300 years. It has to have been because of the way that the coral has grown over it. They've got this, like it said in the storyline, there's this crack team of scientists, and Sharon Stone's character is like this biochemist, so she knows kind of how long coral takes to grow, and so they do this quick calculation, and they're like, okay, so if that thing landed and there's been growing this much, it would have landed in like 1698. But as they get inside of the ship, they see that there's humans there. It's an American vessel. They're speaking in English on, their written language is English, and there are humans inside. So they're like, whoa, this is not alien, which that was super cool to me. I thought that kind of unfolding of that was very Lovecraftian. It was very kind of, foreign. It's like Alien, but if when they got onto the planet in Alien, it was all human, and that would be really interesting too. And it makes you think like what's going on, and then you kind of start to put it together that maybe this is time travel, and it's like, well, how did they time travel? They fell through a black hole, and like, oh my god! So then they just landed back here. So automatically, my sci-fi kind of like mystery spidey senses are tingling, and in a good way. I thought that was a really cool way to kind of start off the movie as far as like intrigue and mystery, and also all the actors in it. I before we keep going with like the story and the conceptual elements, you got to say that while we're watching this, you're also watching Dustin Hoffman, Sharon Stone, Samuel L. Jackson, Liv Schreiber. I mean, Queen Latifah is randomly in this movie, is a kind of a bit part, honestly, but that was fun too. It's a really good cast, and I think everyone did a pretty good job. I think Sharon Stone was a little iffy in some of the parts, but overall, I think it was well acted, and it's just fun to see these characters on screen. This kind of mishmash of high profile actors. I mean, all those guys are A level. Maybe Liv Schreiber is maybe more on the B side, but if you know him, you know him. He's been around for a long time, and he's in a lot of stuff. He's even directed stuff. So really iconic characters here, or character actors, and so to see them on screen together is good. So you got that heightening this film as well. But yeah, so this crack team, I thought it was cool too, is that Dustin Hoffman's kind of the lead, and he kind of put this team together because he wrote this kind of what if scenario for the original Bush administration, Bush Senior. What if we came in contact with extraterrestrials? And so he was writing it to make a check, and he reveals this later to Samuel L. Jackson, he knows all these people and the scientists. He's the kind of the link between all of them, and he says like, hey man, I didn't think this was ever going to be real. So when they asked me to write this for $30,000, I was just looking for a down payment on my house. So he kind of fudged it a little bit, and he just put a bunch of his friends, who are geniuses, of course, in the document, but the government took it for real, and so they have hired all these people that may or may not be super qualified, especially Dustin Hoffman's character, who is just a psychologist. He's not, a scientist or anything. And so that's kind of a fun aspect to it too, is that you got a bit of a ragtag group, and some people, like especially Samuel L. Jackson and Liv Schreiber's character, they kind of are at odds because they're two competing geniuses. Both of them got their first doctorate at ages 18 and 19 respectively, and they're like fighting over that. So I thought that was kind of fun. Good character development there. It helps that they're recognizable actors. I think that does. I mean, if it was just some random people, maybe I wouldn't like it as much, but I don't know. I was enjoying the banter and stuff like that. And then, like I said, I like this idea that they're all on this like kind of station that they like, the substation research vessel station at the bottom of the ocean that they have made, that kind of is looking at this old spaceship that is sitting under the coral. And so that's like kind of a waylay station, so they can go do the research and then go out there and investigate the station and the spacecraft and then come back. I thought that was a really cool setting. And then of course at some point it reminds me, what is that movie that we saw? Obviously The Abyss. This reminds you a lot of The Abyss as well. These like kind of deep underwater stations where they're kind of exploring there. And in The Abyss too, there is a storm at the surface that is going on, so they can't come up to the surface, and that happens in this movie where they basically they're on their own down there. So there's a survival situation as well. So I really liked that. Love those kind of scenarios. And people start dying, of course. Queen Latifah, death by jellyfish, which apparently was pretty complicated scene to film. They used like a mixture of computer generated puppetry and then real jellyfish as well to film that scene. But that's a plus. You get to see Queen Latifah die like in a slasher way to jellyfish, a swarm of jellyfish, which is interesting. But yeah, so people start dying off, and at some point it's literally just the three main characters, Samuel L. Jackson and Sharon Stone and Dustin Hoffman. And at that point too, it's like maybe still 40 minutes left in the movie. So I liked that there was a bit of a fourth act of sorts. A lot of the main action happened about halfway, and then you're like, well, what's going to happen from here? And that is when they pivot into the more mind-bending thing. Because as we haven't talked about, the titular sphere is on the space station, or the spacecraft. And so when they initially go investigate the spacecraft and they're finding out that it's American, all this stuff, they find this room where this perfect sphere, as it said in the storyline, is sitting in there. And what really tips everything off is that the next day after they discover that, that's the thing that's mostly alien, right? They're like, okay, this thing is alien. Everything else is American on here, but this thing that they have found and they've put in this chamber, that is alien. And the genius Samuel L. Jackson is very much like enticed by it. And in the morning the next day, he decides to kind of break out and go, and he enters the sphere. But when Dustin Hoffman comes to pick him up, he's alive. He is just kind of unconscious. And so they bring him back. He wakes up. He's acting weird. And from there, we get kind of the wooey stuff that happens, the kind of interaction between the sci-fi, like, you know, where sci-fi meets the suspended your disbelief, like those things where, you know, you can believe in a station under the, you know, at the ocean floor. You can believe even in a crashed alien ship. But once you get to this, it's almost fantasy where it's like, well, how does this work? He's now manifesting. That's where they talk about manifestations. Like it ends up being to where like your imagination becomes real, which is like so wooey, but the way that they do it, I think, makes sense. And I like that you don't really know how that works at first. It takes a long time for you to kind of understand the rules of that kind of tilt to, because Samuel L. Jackson entered the sphere, he's kind of bringing his dreams, his fears, his imaginations into the space station, which is causing things like a swarm of jellyfish. But is it Samuel L. Jackson that's doing that, or is it the sphere itself? Or did more people into the sphere than we know? And that is like where the kind of unraveling of reality kind of comes into play. And I really just like the way they played with that, the way they played with the kind of mind-bending aspects, because you want to believe, like, for example, that Dustin Hoffman is a reliable narrator, but is he? And is anyone a reliable narrator? At some point in the movie, especially in that last like 30, 40 minutes, you kind of think at one point that each person is like, they're crazy, and they're pointing at the other person saying that they're crazy, and everyone's pointing at each other. And it's like that Spider-Man meme where the three Spider-Mans are pointing at each other. And that's how it feels. And I love that. It was like a Mexican standoff, but with your brain. And it's totally down for that. So I think this movie gets a lot of hate. Obviously there's some hokey stuff in it. The computer graphics and stuff, especially like in the sphere room, is not great. It doesn't hold up perfectly well. But I think when it comes to sci-fi, sometimes you can kind of, look over that. For example, like in Below, right? The first movie of this theme, the CGI was not great. I still gave it a 7 out of 10 because I think, or did I give it a 6.5? I think I gave it a 6.5, but the story was pretty good, but the story wasn't amazing. That's why I kind of kept it down to 6.5. There was parts of that I wanted. With Sphere, I mean, I wouldn't really want them to add much. Dustin Hoffman apparently said that the movie was incomplete and that he wanted them to kind of hold off for a little bit longer so that they can kind of fix some things. And I'm like, I don't know what I watched, but if it's like a director's edit or something, but it seemed tight to me. I mean, it's long. It's like 2 hours and 15 minutes long. So I wouldn't add anything else. If anything, you'd take stuff away, but I thought it was a fun journey. So I'm going to give this a 7.5, by the way. I was thinking 7, and then I was thinking 7.5, and then I was like, maybe this is just a 7. And then the ending really got me. I really liked it. So I very much enjoyed this. Yeah, sure, parts of it may be derivative, but you can be derivative, that's fine. It's just about how you do it. If you can be effective with it, it got me. And I think part of that was that I didn't see it coming, so there's that. I thought that the acting was done well, especially Dustin Hoffman. It's just kind of like, it's just fun watching him do stuff. There was some like kind of unbelievable things that happened, but that's okay too. I was kind of like, yeah, this is a 1998 kind of sci-fi action psychological thriller movie. You can kind of forgive some of that stuff. I did that on Virus. I gave Virus a lot of leeway with that kind of stuff, even though I still gave it like a 6 out of 10. But this one definitely was the best and best made out of the 3 movies of this theme. Sphere is really good. I would actually recommend this movie as a bit of a hidden gem to me. Is The Abyss a better made film? Yes. Is Sphere more entertaining? Possibly. I would say possibly. I think I might have given The Abyss 7, maybe. I don't remember. It's been a while, but that was last year. But I just feel like this movie is a more entertaining Abyss, and The Entity had more mind-altering kind of things to it. Although The Abyss is obviously good for its precedence, and it's biggest set ever made at that point, and first really good use of CGI. I mean, there's a lot of kind of precedence there in that film. But as a film, I don't know. I think Sphere was maybe more fun to me. 7.5. I will recommend this to people who are looking for a good sci-fi mind bender, because there are a few, Pandorum and Solaris, of course, Sunshine. There is a few of those, but I think this one fits kind of within that pretty well. I would definitely recommend it. So I hope everybody has a good week this week. Next week, remember, we have our kind of our gap week. I'm going to be doing my movie news episode, and then we will see what theme I do from there. So I've got a couple actually that I'm running around now. One that's in the lead, but I guess you guys will find out in a couple weeks. So I hope you guys have a good week this week, and I will see you next Friday.